Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. Today I start out by showing you some out-of-this-world alliums and a unique cauliflower. Bailey Lockhart shares with you how she regrew some old onions. We've got the May Bug of the Month, and we'll learn more about bird watching. And finally, it's time to trim up our boxwoods. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
So if you're looking for an easy, low-maintenance perennial, have two different types of flowers on one plant. Capsaicinoids that gives the pepper its heat. You might remember a few weeks ago we talked about how to divide clump-forming alliums. Well, today I have another allium that I want to show you, and it is not a clump-forming allium, but it's a single bulb that we planted here. This particular one is known as Universe, and you can see how it maybe got its name. Now, these are fall bulbs that you plant, but then you get the spring flower on them that comes later in the season after you can see our tulips have finished blooming here. Now, these bulbs, when you buy them, they're about 2 to 3 inches in diameter, so you're going to plant them a little bit deeper, about 5 to 6 inches down in the ground so that they're protected over those winter months, and they are then going to shoot up this foliage followed by a spike, a single stalk that will create this beautiful floral display. Now, those bulbs can be somewhat pricey at about $5 to $6 per bulb, and so you might be a little concerned about rodents and things like that. So if you do buy these and want to protect your investment, you might think about putting that bulb maybe inside of a cage or something like that, some chicken wire, just to protect it from rodents. But it is deer resistant. They don't like it because it's in the allium family. The foliage has that onion fragrance to it still. Now you can see as it comes up, it's sort of anticipating like an amaryllis in the Christmas time when you're watching that flowering stalk come up as to when it's going to suddenly burst open and be on full display. And in fact, it is actually related to the amaryllis. It's in the family Amaryllidaceae. And so it is nice in that regard that you just get this beautiful display. So you can just have a few of them in the garden, or you can also, plant them in mass and create quite a display as well. We've just got 4 that we've planted in here individually in our quadrants of our potager garden. But this will, like I said, get quite large. It's about 8 inches in diameter, and they can get anywhere from 2 to 4 feet tall. So on the giganticums, you want to make sure that you're protecting it from windy areas. As we know, we can get some strong winds in Oklahoma. So if you notice that it is kind of leaning, you might want to be cautious and stake that. Now, if you're looking for something that's a little bit shorter that's still going to give you this strong impact, you might try the Allium schubertii, which is also kind of known as Sputnik or the tumbleweed onion, because it's going to create an impressive sphere of a display like this also, but it actually will get anywhere from 10 to 12 inches in diameter, but stay a little bit shorter at just under 2 feet. Now, both of these alliums are going to produce a lot of foliage initially, and it starts to turn a little bit yellow. You can see how it's starting to yellow. So you might want to interplant them with daylilies or some other like foliage to kind of disguise as this foliage starts to decline. Now, I know this can be quite an impressive display, and you might think $5 to $7 for a bulb might be outside of your budget. So just plant one in a container. It can create quite a statement. However, I must say, once you've tried a few, you might be hooked. So next fall, when you're looking at bulb purchases, you might think about adding either Allium giganticum or Allium schubertii into your garden collection. season, we've been talking about adding some different types of vegetables into your garden. And today we're talking about cauliflower. Now you can see what we have here is not your traditional cauliflower, but this hybrid is actually called Clementine and offers a really unique orange color. Now, like other cauliflower, you can eat it both raw and cooked. And in fact, this will actually hold the color even after it's cooked. So not only will it grab your eye out in the garden, but it'll also grab your eye in the kitchen or on a veggie tray as well. So cauliflower, when you grow it in the home garden, one thing you might want to consider is the fact that, depending on our spring, it can be maybe an iffy crop sometimes. However, we germinated it actually in the greenhouse in late January, and then we transplanted them about mid-March into our garden here. Now this is a mid-size cauliflower, so the heads on it are going to get to be about 4 inches in diameter. So you can see this particular one is about ready to harvest, so we're going to go ahead and show you how to do that. And one of the ways you know when cauliflower is about ready to harvest is the leaves will actually sort of open up to reveal that flower head, and that flower head is actually called a curd. And so you can see this head has started to open up. Now, if you have the white form of cauliflower, or if you for some reason want to go ahead and keep these white because it's actually the sun that helps change the color on these. There's also other colored cauliflowers such as purple and green. What you can do is sort of get a rubber band and tie up those leaves around over that curd to keep the sunlight out and sort of blanch that. Now that might be of interest, especially even if you have the white one, because sometimes those white ones will start to turn a little bit yellow. So it'll really give you that bright white cauliflower look. There are some cultivars that are on the market that sort of are self-blanching, meaning that the leaves will naturally continue to cover over that head, sort of protecting it from that sunlight and from getting sunburned. So you can see ours is starting to open up here. We've got a nice a 4-inch head here. And then the other thing too is you can see that it's still pretty tight, and that's an important thing. We want to make sure that we're harvesting it before that expands and loosens. It is flower buds that we're looking at. So if we were to leave this longer, they're going to continue to elongate and expand and actually start to open up. And then at that point, we've lost our flavor and it's really too late to harvest them. Now, the other thing too is we are within our window of maturity. So this particular one matures at about 67 days. So again, we're right there in that window so that we know it's time to harvest it. Now, when you harvest it, you're going to really just go ahead and take the whole plant, because with cauliflower, for the most part, you really only get that one flower. It doesn't traditionally have side shoots or anything that develop sometimes like your other plants that you might get, like broccoli and stuff. But really, we're just after this one. You can either cut it just below the cauliflower head or curd, or you can go ahead and cut the whole plant off at the stem there. So what you do is once you've got that, you can sort of just break some of these branches back, and that'll just kind of keep it and protect it a little bit more as you store it. It will actually store about a week in the refrigerator. But honestly, with something this curious, I guarantee your family's going to eat it up right away as soon as you bring it indoors.
I'm sure many of us have bought onions at the store and brought them home and just have forgotten about them. You start moving stuff around in your pantry and you realize that you have these onions that have all this green growth, but they're not any good to cook with anymore. The same thing happened to us this past year. We harvested so many onions that we couldn't eat them all. And so instead of throwing them out or putting them in the compost, I decided to divide them and to see if we could grow more onions out of them. So with the new green growth, the onion bulbs started to deteriorate to help support and give nutrients to the new growth. And so the outside of it was papery and it was just starting to fall apart and smell really bad. I took those onion bulbs and laid them all out, and I decided to divide them. So the first step that I did was I took a knife and I carefully cut into the first bulb. And I started peeling back each of those layers until I got to the very middle of the onion bulb. Once I got to the middle of it, I looked and there were these little onion sets that were joined together. So I carefully pulled them apart, or in some cases I had to use a knife. So each of my onion bulbs gave me anywhere from 2 to 4 new onion sets. Once I had those all pulled apart, I accidentally damaged a few, and I decided to plant all of the onion sets. So for the most part, I planted them in these pots, which is fairly unique. I put them in these pots so that way I could control the amount of moisture and just keep an eye on them and be able to identify which bulbs and onion sets that I had accidentally nicked or damaged in that process. And so you can see in this pot that I had it labeled that I accidentally injured these while I was dividing them, and they've grown these beautiful bulbs that are growing perfectly well, and I wouldn't mind using them. So all these onions, you can tell, are ready to harvest. The first sign is that it's starting to flop over. The bulbs are about the perfect size that I would want to use in the kitchen, and they're beginning to flower. So these onions are starting to flower because they are biennial plants. All that means is that they grow, mature, produce seed, and die within 2 growing seasons. And since these onions were grown last year and I took from those onions we grew last year, they're beginning to flower, and you can see it with this flower stalk. But these are ready to harvest, and all I'm going to do is pull them out of this pot and let them dry for a few days and take them inside to store them. If you want any more information on how to harvest or how to store your onions, you can check out this video we did last year.
Welcome back for another Bug of the Month segment. This time we are looking at May beetles, or June bugs as a lot of folks call them, but this is the May segment because this is when they start to turn up around people's porch lights, usually. That is a June beetle. And June beetles are common all across the United States and all across the world. They're a huge, huge group of insects, and they may show up anytime in the summer, not just May or June. And these are the adults of the white grubs that you will find in the soil whenever you're in your garden digging around. And the correlation there that we want to make is that if you're seeing a lot of May beetles or June beetles flying around your porch lights in the back or in the front, you want to know that those are the adults of the larvae, the white grubs in the soil that are eating the roots of your grass and causing some damage. And so the best way to solve that would be to turn off the porch lights at night until they're really all and thoroughly gone by the end of the summer.
Today we're back with one of our favorite ornithologists, Dr. Tim O'Connell. And Dr. O'Connell, can we talk a little bit about bird watching? Because I know a lot of people have gotten into it, and maybe some are wanting to get into it.
Sure. Well, if you twist my arm, I'll be happy to talk about bird watching. I, of course, love birds. I've studied birds since I was a little kid, and anytime I get to share that with other people, it makes me really happy. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. So if we can spend a few minutes talking about how easy it is to get into it and what it's all about, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah. So do I need to go out and buy khaki and a hat and binoculars and get the costume, or what do apps?
I am a big fan of costuming. However, you don't need it to be a birder. You know,
Okay.
what you really just need to do is start keeping track of the things that are around you.
Okay.
And one of the great things about birds is that so many of them are not just showy in their plumage, but they're also singing and calling all the time. So they're calling attention to us. And if we sort of learn their language and learn how to identify them by their songs and calls, that can really greatly advance how quickly you can come to appreciate them.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
just really tuning into them and being more observant about them.
That's a huge part of it, because you can go birding just about anywhere.
Okay.
There are very few places in the world you can go that don't have birds.
Right.
And most of them are active during the day, which makes it easier to encounter them too.
Okay.
So I think it's terrific. And everyone should be paying attention to birds, for
And
sure.
and it can happen in your backyard, right? You don't have to be in a wooded area or a prairie or, cities, country.
Yeah, so when you're just starting out, any place that you go to day, whether you're just walking the dog or maybe you're gardening out in the backyard, these are great times that you can be, learning some birds that are around your own home or in your own neighborhood. Then if you reach a point at which you want to learn more, or maybe you want to see some things that you're not likely to see around your house, then maybe you're like, I think I want to go see some grassland birds.
Okay.
And then you start sort of learning a little bit more about where you can go to find those. Or maybe I want to see some birds that are really just going to be in the forest. They're not going to come around my house. So
Okay.
then you can start to plan some forays to do things like that.
Okay.
And of course, people get really serious into birding. They even want to see the rare stuff, things that are way out of range. And it's fun for them to sort of keep track of that.
So then you might be going to tropical countries, right?
Or you might be waiting here for something from a tropical country to come visit.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let's talk about that because things are kind of migrating up right now.
There's a good south wind, and this is perfect conditions for migration. There's some kind of bird on the move all through the year,
Okay.
right? But they're like the peak of migration is in spring and fall. And spring is a little bit more fun than fall because there's a tremendous urgency of the birds. They're racing northwards to get to their breeding territories, and the first ones back get the pick of the best
Okay,
spots,
okay.
right? So it really is. You almost get that sense of urgency when you see them.
Uh-huh.
Little birds like songbirds, warblers, vireos, sparrows, thrushes, things like that, they usually migrate at night. And then during the morning, they'll sort of put down and then look for a place where they can find some food and be safe for a bit, and then try to replenish whatever fat they've used up in the last night's migration.
Okay.
Oh, there goes a woodpecker. Teet, 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 teet. Sorry, occupational hazard. So that's a great time to see them in the spring because they're really active when you encounter them. They're really like jumping around looking for food, trying to get ready for the next night of migration. And
Right.
then they'll fly at night and do the next leg.
Okay. Well, so you just mentioned you heard birds. You're not even looking for them, and it's instinctual now at this point.
Correct,
So
correct.
it's not just a sight thing; it is an auditory thing as well.
Very much so. When I look at the surveys that I did back in grad school back in the day, which was hundreds of sites and thousands of points, and I actually count that up. We used to keep track of, is this a bird you heard or you saw? 95% of them we never saw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's almost all ear birding to like detect something that's there. But there are some things that are around today that are even easier than that.
Okay.
And one of my favorite is an app called Merlin. It's produced by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, and it's free. And one of the features on Merlin is you can stand there with your smartphone and you can hit Sound ID, and you could just record the sounds around you. It recognizes the birds that are singing around you. So like a cardinal just sang over that way. If we were standing here with the app right now, cardinal would light up and it would say northern cardinal just sang. And it's a tremendous way to sort of build that reinforcement of hearing and then seeing it light up. Like that's that sound.
Okay.
And when people start to make those connections,
Right.
for one, it changes their lives. That's like what the students tell me when we're teaching ornithology. I've heard that my whole life. I never knew what it was, and I'm so tuned in, and I can't stop birding, and I'm driving my friends and family crazy, and it's all your fault. And that's what I want.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is important. I mean, it's a fun hobby, right?
Sure.
But it also adds value to science, even if you really got into it too. The citizen science kind of approach.
Yeah.
Helping to monitor migration patterns and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, all of that kind of stuff. So most people who get seriously into birding aren't just sort of looking for a rare bird or just sort of enjoying the birds in their backyard over a cup of coffee. They want to have their records sort of collected somewhere and shared. And that's data. That's biological data. Like this organism was at this point, at this time.
Yeah.
That's really powerful data. And in ornithology, we have this tradition of amateurs, just birders, producing those data. They've been doing it for more than 100 years on the Audubon Christmas bird counts. They've been doing it since the mid-1960s on the Breeding Bird Survey, which is another sort of citizen science program. And as a researcher myself, I use those data, right? So it's really fun for me to contribute data to those programs, and then in my research, use those data.
Right.
So I'm really interested in like training the next generation of people who are populating those databases on into the future. One that's, again, really easy to use, and it's an app related to Merlin, produced by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, is eBird. And eBird, it's not just any one program where you have to be at one place at one day or you're using some sort of standardized technique. It's just anything you hear around you or see around you, you just make a little checklist and then you enter it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I can do an eBird checklist right here while we're talking. right?
And then-
then upload that, and those data then are archived.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating for people both on either end of it. So as a person in your backyard, you can help add to that scientific information, and then you as a researcher are then able to utilize it. So,
It's a win-win.
It's
It's a win-win
awesome.
for the birds.
and not to mention, you're just getting out and being able to enjoy the environment as well. So
There are people who run and bird.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who cycle and bird, and obviously people do a lot of walking.
and some people that do television interviews and bird at
Hey,
the same
you
time.
know, some of us just can't turn it off.
Thank you, Dr. O'Connell.
My pleasure, Casey.
This winter, we talked about winter burn on our boxwoods. And as you can see, now we're in May and we're well past the freeze, but we definitely have suffered some damage from those freezing temperatures on our boxwoods. So we're going to talk about what we do at this point. I know a lot of people have had some of their broadleaf evergreens and even their arborvitae suffering. And we're particularly seeing that a lot of that is just because of a couple of years ago when we had the ice storm and then we had the heavy freeze, and then we've been suffering through some drought conditions. And so it's sort of been the knockout punch on a lot of our evergreens. But today with these boxwoods, there is still hope with them. You can see that there is still green. And so basically we're going to go in and sort of select out and prune out the dead vegetation. Now you can do this in a couple of ways. For something that's smaller like this, I'm just going to use hand pruners and go through and really take out some of the dead stuff. If you have larger boxwoods, you can use some power trimmers or shears and really kind of take off some of that dead that might be on the exterior. Now, usually with winter freeze, what you're going to see is that the outside that maybe has been exposed to those colder temperatures is what you're seeing that has been damaged. And a lot of times you'll see still some maybe even orange foliage to it. But if you look down in the crown of that plant, you're going to see that there is still green down in there. And a lot of times you'll have a lot of green shoots that are starting to come on at this point. So the main focus is not necessarily about trying to create a nice boxwood hedge here. They're still very young. And so what we're more concerned about is getting out the dead so that we can then allow that new fresh vegetation to continue to photosynthesize and actually help support those roots as it goes through this season. So I'm just going to take my hand pruners and be very selective and work on this since it's a small area. But like I said, if you had a big area, you could use power tools as well. So now that we've got it all pruned back, you can see we've kind of got sort of a wild hair boxwood hedge going, which is fine because again, I'm not worried about making it a clipped hedge too much right now. I just want to get it growing. And because we waited later in the season, we've already got some new vegetation coming on. So this, for example, we could have probably cut this back if we wanted more of a uniform look, and it's going to grow out. The other thing is when we were going through here clipping, you can kind of see that in some areas it might look dead down below, but it actually has a lot of green growth above it. So you're still going to see some of that dead leaves in there, which is fine. It's going to, again, grow out and cover that up over time. So again, we're just trying to get this hedge established and get it kind of rejuvenated for the season. Now, the other thing what you want to do to sort of rejuvenate it right now is early before the heat of the summer is to go ahead and put down a little fertilizer. Again, you might base this off of a fertilizer or a soil analysis as to what fertility you have with your soil. But we're just using a tree and shrub fertilizer. You might look for something that has a little bit of iron or sulfur in it to kind of help with that green vegetation. And we're just going to sprinkle this and kind of side dress around our boxwoods a little bit. Now, the thing is you don't necessarily want to use those tree or shrub spikes because boxwoods have shallow roots. And so the fertilizer can actually burn those roots. So we are just literally kind of dressing this around on top of the mulch, and then we'll irrigate it to allow it to soak in. And after we fertilize and water these, we'll, continue to monitor and make sure that if we are going through more of a drought condition, we do get water on our boxwoods here. But other than that, they don't really need any maintenance going through the summer. You might again fertilize late in the fall, not to encourage growth, but after they've kind of shut down for the season and we've had sort of that frost, it'll help with that root development as it continues through those winter months. But other than that, they're a pretty low maintenance plant. And again, just to reestablish your boxwoods, this is kind of an easy way to recover them after winter burn. There are a lot of great horticulture activities this time of year. Be sure and consider some of these events in the weeks ahead.
Join us next week right here on Oklahoma Gardening as we're bringing in the harvest.
Statement, you might find yourself, I don't even like what I'm saying because I didn't talk about rodents either.
To find out more information about show topics as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure to visit our website at oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. Join in on Facebook and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. Tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater gem. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticulture Society, the Tulsa Garden Club, and the Tulsa Garden Center.